from making niche, life-critical, highly engineered rotating parts for nuclear turbines to rotating parts for civil and military aircraft engines. Hyderabad-based AZAD Engineering is doing it all.
Myself, Rakesh Chopdar, I'm the chairman and CEO at AZAD. AZAD was established in the year 2008 with just one machine and me being the self-operator on that. So we can term this as a scratch story. Today we are a very strong team of more than 1,200 people working, catering to the very niche markets in the aviation, energy, oil and gas and defense. AZAD Engineering is a manufacturer of very critical and high complex engineered components. And these are not really common in the manufacturing industries, as we term them as life critical components, especially any rotating component manufactured in this scale of aviation, energy, oil and gas or defense, wherever the sectors where AZAD plays a role in. AZAD plays a role in that very niche segments of, say, the 10% of the engineering where we define is something very different, and a lot of barriers. There are a lot of barriers to break to get the approvals and qualifications. If we talk about the product line, they're very highly engineered, high complex, and very tough to manufacture to match the requirements, because they're very governed as we term them as life critical components. What are these life critical components? Is like, when we make these rotating components, they are 3D components, and the impact on the function of these components has a direct impact on the life. Like example, you have got the engines on the aircraft. We call them as turbine stroke engine, and then we have engines land-based, which basically majorly used for power generation, mechanical drive, oil and gas areas. Aviation, these engines are used in the civil aircrafts as well as the military aircrafts. And then there is a lot of things when you see these rotating components inside, and they are not two-dimensional product, they are three-dimensional product. And as you can see, when on a 32,000 feet height, right, and these rotating components, if something goes wrong, like we can imagine, it can be catastrophic. So this is where we term these as life critical products. Same thing as if we use in oil and gas, it goes 32,000 feet down or 20,000 feet down to the well operations. And then we talk in energy, again, these engines are like these lights you switched on just now, some turbine is running somewhere. If something goes wrong with these products, so the OEMs in this whole world, there are very few who could maintain this technology, and leaders are very limited in the world, so as the suppliers. So when we call this class A components, and these components has a lot of barriers to get a qualification done. And once you have a qualification, you have the approval, and once the approval is there, this is how the business starts. So I would say that this is a very high-end engineered components what we are AZAD is playing a role in. Yeah, so as I mentioned, like these are life critical products, and how I mean to say is if you can just have a look at this beautiful highly engineered components. Now these components have a very specific function in an engine, right? First of all, we should understand the engine, right? The engines which you can see in the pictures, which generates thrust and the aircraft flies, or a land-based turbine which is having these components, which is optimized in such micro tolerances to achieve the output where you see the power generation or a thrust which flies off the aircraft. Now if you can have a look at this beautiful component, it's three-dimensional, right? It has it's a twisted product, right? And this is not just one. They're related to each and every function of the engine. And this is where you feel the thrust, right? When the flight takes off, right? You feel the thrust. So these are the components which gives the thrust. Just imagine if this shares off, of course it should not. And if this shares off, and what can happen? It can create disasters, it can create a lot of things. So when I mention you life critical products, this is something, all these parts what you see has a very, very specific function in the engine, the function of an engine. Again mentioned, this is a very niche technology, and there are not many players within the globe which are in this these engines. So if you talk about land-based, the three major customers or players in this field who controls the 70% of the market, like GE, Mitsubishi, Siemens. We call these three are the leaders. Then we have Skoda Power, then we have Ansaldo, we have many other players accordingly. And when you come in the aviation space, we have got Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, GE Aviation, Safran. These are the four major players who manufactures engine for the commercial and the military aircrafts. Then we have space, So there are hardly few, you can count on the players or the customer base what we have. For these product lines, what we are approved by these large OEMs, what I mentioned, and if you can just have a look at the cross section of this engine, and we compete China, we compete Europe, we compete Japan, America, and Korea. So these are the 5 areas where AZAD competes. India, we are the only one approved to manufacture these critical rotating components. There are a lot of criteria to cross all these barriers, and within this, you have to also show the capability not once. So the consistency, what we look at. Now, AZAD was a component manufacturer for various components for this engine. But recently, if you have heard in a couple of months back, AZAD won an order to manufacture complete engine. That's where AZAD is transforming from component to a complete jet engine manufacturing. So that's a big accomplishment for India, not just AZAD. Right? That's where we feel to show that not only the world, we would like to be a great, a solution provider for the Indian government as 15 years, 2008 till 15 years, we spent all our energy, all our resources to qualify. That's the main criteria that all these OEMs, what I mentioned you, they just don't pick up the parts just because they're cheap or something. No, we have some criteria, we have to break all the barriers. Now, as we finish unless you don't qualify, you don't get approval, you don't get revenues, you can't sell the products. So we focused all these 14, 15 years in qualifying every product what you see here, and it takes months and months to just qualify one single product. All of this, just imagine that we need to take all the qualifications and the timeline what is consumed is roughly to that level. When you try to match their requirements, you need a massive capacity. For that massive capacity, you need large capital. And these 15 years, AZAD didn't grow in revenues, but AZAD grew in qualifications, right? So now the target is over. And when we try to explain the investment fraternity that this is the business, as we are the only company in India, no one really had an idea like these companies exist. So when they went in deep of these parts and they were like, not able to understand because they've never seen this before. So in this case, what we did is, as we complete qualification, now you can see this large facility which is coming up, right? This large facility which is coming up. We need to build this whole facility, add capacity, a lot of resources, you need a lot of capital. And when we try to raise money in that way, we thought listing is the best option for us, so that as and when required, we can raise money in a very short time, because the growth now has just started for AZAD. This is just a start. So when I say hyper growth, today if we see the TAM, we are less than 1%, and we compete the globe. And happily, we try to increase our growth from 1 to 3 to 5 to 10%. That's a big number. That's where the journey is started now. That's the reason this big massive facility coming up. And this massive facility is going to cater to all these 4 divisions: oil and gas, energy, aviation in civil and defense as well. Moreover, there are other areas which AZAD doesn't want to leave its legacy in the niche area, where it's not just the machines, not just the precision. There's a lot of solutions AZAD can provide. As example, I hope you could recollect on the ATGG program, the Advanced Turbojet Engine. It's one of a milestone. It's not been understood well what exactly this engine is, and not just from component to an assembly. And these engines has a very vital role to play in the Indian defense industry. Very important. India is importing. There are many parts which India is importing when I started, and then we started exporting. So look at the thing where India imports, AZAD exports. However, as we came up and with the vision of Shri Narendra Modi ji, our Honorable Prime Minister, having Atmanirbhar Bharat, then this is where our recognition started, right? Like BHEL in India as a PSU, is to buy these parts, import from China and Europe. Today we are there. Today we are there to give a solution. India doesn't need to import anymore now. Similarly, there are many such programs where AZAD is working on. So when I say hyper growth, it's very imminent to see, and already it was laid a plan, and that's why 10x facility is under construction. So we have a plan for every inch and every square meter, what exactly we are going to do with that 10x size of AZAD. I used to work in my father's factory, right? Atlas Fasteners, where I used to manufacture nuts and bolts. And this is where we interacted the first customer who comes in and, try to buy these fasteners and all. So he was holding this rotating company's hand, and this is where I really got attracted. Me, being a high school dropout, I did my engineering on the shop floor, right? And I started working since the age 16. 4-5 years, I did my shop floor engineering. So I'm a good engineer, by the way. Not educated, but I'm an engineer. This is where I had hands-on experience, and as I mentioned you, we, AZAD, got exposure from the global first from a European company, and then started business in India. Even today, our exports are more than 85-90%. There were years, 100% goes export. That's why a lot of people don't know AZAD. They don't know us. Now, where the solution required for India? This engine. There are many such programs which haven't taken off well. India has tried a lot. GTRE, DRDO struggle to make engines. They are successful, I'm not saying that. But the way it has to go, the way it has to be converted, this is where I'm very confident. I'm definitely going to value add for India. And I'm going to prove in 2026. I will show this engine been flying. Stop importing anymore. Let's export.